Police! Hands up! Step away from the door!
I'm Jake, 34, and until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Married to Emma for 4 years, decent job as a structural engineer, nice house in a neighborhood that was slowly bankrupting me. But hey, that's the American dream, right? Looking back now, I can see how perfectly I played the role of the ideal Mark. Trusting, financially stable, emotionally invested, and just naive enough to mistake being taken advantage of for being a supportive husband. Emma was everything you'd want on paper. Smart, charming in that effortless way that made restaurant servers remember her name and strangers strike up conversations at grocery stores. Ambitious to the point where she'd network at a funeral if she thought it could advance her career. She was always the center of attention at parties, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and somehow make everyone else feel like they were auditioning for her approval. I used to love watching her work a crowd, thinking I was the lucky fool who got to take her home at the end of the night. What a goddamn idiot I was. Emma worked in digital marketing, or was it public relations? Honestly, I could never keep track because her job description seemed to change depending on who was asking and how impressive she needed to sound. But whatever the hell she was doing, it required a lot of networking. And by networking, I mean staying out until 2 a.m. at industry events that somehow never had any photos posted on social media. Funny how that works, right? I'm not some controlling psycho who demands to know where his wife is every second of the day. I believe in trust, in giving people space to breathe and grow, and all that modern relationship BS they write about in those self-help books that cluttered our nightstand. But there's trust, and then there's being a goddamn doormat. And somewhere along the way, I'd crossed that line without even realizing it. The financial arrangement we had should have been my first red flag, but hindsight's 20/20ths, and I was apparently wearing beer goggles for 4 straight years. Emma never chipped in much financially, and by not much, I mean practically nothing. I paid the mortgage on our townhouse, a mortgage that made my accountant wince every time we reviewed my finances. I covered the utilities, the internet, the cable package she insisted we needed because everyone watches HBO. I bought most of the groceries, funded our date nights, and somehow ended up paying for her gym membership too, because we're a team, babe. Every month, I'd get a little tighter around the collar when the bills came in, but I told myself it was temporary. Emma was building her career, finding her footing in a competitive industry. Once she got that promotion she was always talking about, once she landed that big client she was always chasing, she'd start contributing more. We were partners, and partners supported each other through thick and thin, right? That's what marriage was supposed to be about. What a load of horseshit that turned out to be. But the real kicker, the thing that should have sent me running for the hills faster than a tourist fleeing Times Square, was how she guarded her phone. That little device was practically surgically attached to her hand, always face down on whatever surface was nearby, locked tighter than Fort Knox. She'd changed the passcode from our anniversary date, which I'd known because, we used to share things like normal couples, to something I couldn't guess if my life depended on it. Privacy is important in a relationship, she'd say whenever I made some casual comment about her phone habits. We don't need to know everything about each other's lives. And like the trusting fool I was, I'd nod and agree because that sounded reasonable, didn't it? Mature couples respected boundaries. Healthy relationships required individual space. All that Dr. Phil BS that sounds great in theory, but falls apart the moment you realize your wife is treating you like a roommate who happens to pay all the bills. The late nights started getting longer somewhere around year 2 of our marriage. What used to be the occasional work dinner became weekly events, then twice weekly, then practically every goddamn night of the week. Emma would text me around 5 o'clock. Always a text, never a call, letting me know she wouldn't be home for dinner. Big client meeting or team building event, or my personal favorite, mandatory company social. I'd eat alone more often than not, sitting at our dining table that could seat 6, but usually only seated one lonely engineer wondering where the hell his wife was. I'd save her leftovers like some kind of devoted golden retriever waiting for his owner to come home. Sometimes she'd eat them the next day. Sometimes they'd sit in the fridge until they went bad, and I'd throw them out, feeling guilty about the waste. The unease started as this tiny knot in my stomach, like when you know you've forgotten something important but can't remember what. It grew slowly, fed by her secretive phone calls in the bathroom, her sudden interest in working out, her new wardrobe that somehow appeared without any corresponding credit card charges on our joint account. Little things that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture I was too damn stupid to see. Love meant trust, I kept telling myself. If you loved someone, you believed in them. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You didn't turn into some paranoid psycho who checked up on their spouse like they were a teenager with a fake ID. I was better than that. We were better than that. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly I played my role in this whole charade. I was the ideal Mark, trusting, financially stable, emotionally invested, and just naive enough to mistake being taken advantage of for being a supportive husband. I was so busy congratulating myself on being the kind of modern man who didn't need to control his wife that I completely missed the fact that my wife was living a completely separate life that didn't include me except as a source of financial security. Last Tuesday changed everything. It was an ordinary weeknight that you'd forget about 5 minutes after living it if it weren't for the fact that it completely blew up your entire freaking life. I was standing in our kitchen, my kitchen as it turns out, wearing the stupid Kiss the Cook apron Emma had bought me for Christmas. Real cute, right? Except the only person kissing this cook these days was apparently nobody. I was making my specialty, which is basically the only thing I can cook without setting off the smoke detector. Spaghetti with meat sauce from a jar. Because I'm not some Food Network superstar, just a guy trying to have dinner ready when his wife got home from another one of her mysterious work events. The pasta was boiling away, filling the kitchen with that starchy steam that makes you feel domestic and accomplished, like you've got your shit together even when you absolutely don't. My phone was sitting on the counter next to the stove, and when it buzzed with that familiar text notification sound, I didn't even look at it right away. I was too busy trying not to burn the ground beef because apparently I can't multitask worth a damn when it comes to cooking. But the buzz registered in my brain as Emma texting me her ETA, maybe letting me know she was running late but would be home soon. The usual dance we'd been doing for months. So I wiped my hands on that ridiculous apron, picked up my phone, and swiped to read what I assumed would be another variation of stuck in traffic, or meeting running over, start without me. You know, the standard BS I'd gotten used to accepting as normal married life. Instead, what I saw made my stomach drop faster than a faulty elevator. "I'll be staying at Marcus's tonight, don't wait up." That was it. No explanation, no apology, no something came up or emergency situation or even a half-assed excuse about a work crisis. Just a casual, matter-of-fact announcement that my wife would be spending the night at another man's house, delivered with all the emotion of someone telling me they'd picked up milk on the way home. Marcus, her coworker, the guy whose name had been popping up in conversation more and more frequently over the past few months. Marcus from the office, who was so funny and really gets the industry and has such great ideas for the Henderson campaign. Marcus, who she'd mentioned was going through a divorce and needed friends to support him through this difficult time. Marcus, whose jokes she laughed at just a little too loudly during those rare office functions I actually got invited to, her hand touching his arm while she threw her head back like he was the funniest mother who ever lived. My pulse didn't race like you'd expect. It didn't spike with anger or panic or any of those dramatic emotions you see in movies when someone's world collapses. Instead, it slowed down, like my heart was suddenly working underwater, each beat deliberate and heavy and final. It was the weirdest goddamn thing, this calm that settled over me like fog rolling in from the ocean. I could hear the meat still sizzling in the pan behind me, probably starting to burn now that I wasn't paying attention. But I couldn't bring myself to care. The pasta water was bubbling away, probably overcooking into mush, but that seemed about as important as yesterday's weather forecast. I stood there in my stupid apron holding my phone, and for the first time in 4 years of marriage, I saw the situation clearly. Not through the rose-colored glasses of trust and love and partnership, but with the brutal clarity that comes when someone finally stops lying to you because they don't think you're worth the effort anymore. This wasn't some last-minute work emergency. This wasn't Emma being a good colleague to a friend in need. This was my wife telling me in the most casual way possible that she'd chosen to spend the night in another man's bed. And she expected me to just accept it like the well-trained doormat I'd apparently become. The funny thing is, part of me wanted to call her immediately to demand an explanation, to yell and scream and make her justify this BS decision. Part of me wanted to jump in my car and drive over to Marcus's place and pound on the door, like some unhinged husband in a bad Lifetime movie. But a bigger part of me, the part that had been quietly absorbing all those red flags for months, just felt tired. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know." 4 words, polite, acknowledging, completely damn calm. Not "what the hell do you mean?" Or "are you freaking kidding me right now?" Or "we need to talk." Just a simple thank you, like she'd told me she'd picked up my dry cleaning. I hit send and watched the message disappear into the digital void, carrying with it any pretense that our marriage was something worth fighting for. That's when my father's voice echoed in my head, clear as if the old man was standing right there in the kitchen with me. He'd been dead for 3 years. But his advice about relationships had always stuck with me, probably because he'd learned it the hard way himself. A partner who hides is already gone, son. Don't beg someone who's choosing to leave. Have some goddamn dignity. At the time, I'd thought he was just being cynical, bitter about his own divorce from my mother, but standing there with Emma's text message glowing on my phone screen, I finally understood what he meant. Emma wasn't hiding anymore. She was being completely honest about her priorities, and I wasn't one of them. I turned off the burner under the meat, which had indeed started to burn and was filling the kitchen with that acrid smell of neglected cooking. I drained the pasta, which had turned to mush just like I'd predicted. Then I walked to the hall closet, pulled out a stack of empty moving boxes I'd saved from our last move because I'm apparently the kind of person who saves cardboard just in case, and started climbing the stairs to our bedroom. It was time to help Emma with her obviously inevitable transition to her new living situation. Packing her belongings felt like dismantling evidence from my own trial, proof of all the times I'd ignored the obvious signs that my wife was living a completely separate life. Each piece of clothing was a memory of me being an idiot. That black cocktail dress she'd worn to my company Christmas party, where she'd spent most of the evening talking to my boss about synergistic opportunities, while I stood around like a well-dressed accessory. The red sundress from our anniversary dinner 2 months ago, where she'd spent half the meal texting someone about urgent work stuff that apparently couldn't wait until business hours. Her handbags required their own boxes, designer purses that cost more than some people's rent, all lined up like trophies from battles I didn't even know were being fought. Her shoes filled 2 entire boxes, everything from stilettos that could double as weapons to casual sneakers that cost more than my monthly gym membership. The jewelry box was particularly painful. Necklaces, earrings, bracelets, most of them gifts from me for birthdays, anniversaries, random thinking of you moments that apparently meant more to me than they did to her. By midnight, I'd filled 8 moving boxes and 2 large suitcases with the physical remnants of Emma's presence in my life. The bedroom looked foreign now, like a hotel room after housekeeping had come through and erased all evidence of the previous occupant. My clothes hung in the closet with room to breathe. My side of the dresser wasn't crowded anymore. The bathroom counter actually had space for my stuff without her clutter everywhere. I wasn't grieving, I realized as I stood there surveying my work. I was dismantling a lie, piece by piece, box by box, until all that remained was the truth. I'd been living with a stranger who'd been using me as a financial safety net while she explored her other options. Loading my Honda Accord with Emma's belongings at 11 o'clock at night felt like I was disposing of evidence from a crime scene, except the only crime committed here was my own willful blindness to 4 years of red flags waving in my face. My sensible sedan wasn't exactly built for moving services, but I managed to cram 8 boxes and 2 suitcases into every available space, like some kind of automotive Tetris champion. The drive across town to Marcus's building gave me plenty of time to think, which was probably the last thing I needed right then. I passed the coffee shop where Emma and I used to go on Sunday mornings, back when we still did things together that didn't involve me paying for everything while she checked her phone. I passed the restaurant where we'd had our last anniversary dinner, where she'd spent half the meal responding to work emails on that goddamn phone of hers. Marcus's building was exactly what you'd expect. All glass and steel and expensive landscaping that screamed, "Successful young professionals live here." I'd been to this building exactly once before, when Emma had asked me to drop her off for what she'd called team drinks with coworkers. I'd waited in the car while she ran inside to grab something from Marcus's apartment, watching her disappear through the lobby doors and wondering why she needed to retrieve work documents from a colleague's home at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Now I knew exactly what she'd been grabbing, and it wasn't damn paperwork. Fate was feeling cooperative for once in my goddamn life. As I was standing outside the building with my arms full of Emma's designer bees, wondering how I was going to sweet-talk my way past the security system, The lobby door opened and some hipster in skinny jeans walked out. I caught the door with my foot, nodding my thanks to the guy who barely glanced at me because apparently strange men carrying boxes into residential buildings at midnight is just Tuesday night in this neighborhood. The elevator ride to the 9th floor gave me time to practice my breathing and wonder if I was having some kind of mental breakdown. Normal people probably don't deliver their cheating spouse's belongings to their lover's apartment at midnight. Normal people probably scream and cry and demand explanations and try to work things out through couples therapy. But I'd never felt more clear-headed in my life. This wasn't a breakdown. This was clarity. This was the first honest thing I'd done in months, maybe years. Apartment 9C. Standing in front of it with Emma's entire wardrobe packed into boxes felt like the culmination of every ignored instinct I'd had over the past year. I set the boxes down as quietly as possible, stacking them neatly against the door like some kind of passive-aggressive care package. The suitcases went on either side, creating a little fortress of Emma's abandoned life that Marcus would discover when he opened his door in the morning. The note was something I'd written while packing. Emma's belongings. She's yours now. Short, sweet, and to the freaking point. No accusations, no drama, no begging or pleading. Just a simple acknowledgement of the new reality. Marcus had won the prize of Emma's full-time attention, along with all the financial responsibility that came with it. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the whole setup. 8 boxes, 2 suitcases, and 1 note arranged outside apartment 9C, like some kind of surreal art installation titled The Remains of a Marriage. The photo wasn't for social media or revenge, it was for me. Proof that I'd actually done this thing. The locksmith I'd called was a grizzled guy named Pete, who looked like he'd seen every variety of domestic drama that late-night lock changes usually represented. He didn't ask questions, just got to work with the professional competence of someone who'd installed a lot of fresh starts for people whose lives had recently gone sideways. 200 even, Pete said when he finished, handing me a set of shiny new keys. High-security locks, so don't lose them. Pain in the A to replace. Inside, I deleted Emma from our shared streaming accounts, our shared cloud storage, our joint credit card that she'd never contributed to anyway. Each deletion felt like removing a splinter that had been working its way deeper under my skin for months. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of the good whiskey I'd been saving for special occasions and waited for the phone calls that were sure to come. The first call came at exactly 12:47 a.m. Emma's name lit up my screen with that photo I'd taken of her laughing at some restaurant last summer, back when I thought her smile was meant for me. I let it ring 5 times, 6 times, until it went to voicemail with that cheerful greeting we'd recorded together. Hey, you've reached Emma and Jake. We can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and we'll get back to you. God, we sounded so damn happy in that recording. 7 calls by 2:30 a.m. Each one felt more satisfying to ignore than the last. There was something deeply satisfying about watching my phone buzz on the coffee table while I sat there sipping whiskey and enjoying the silence of my own home. No background noise of Emma's constant phone conversations, no clicking of her expensive heels on the hardwood floors, no sound of her texting someone while pretending to watch whatever movie I'd chosen. Finally answered on the 4th ring of call 8 at 3 a.m., mainly because the whiskey had made me curious about what kind of excuse she'd managed to construct. Jake. Her voice was different than I'd heard it in months. Cracked and shaky and completely stripped of that confident, controlled tone she used when managing me like one of her work projects. Jake, what is this? Why are my things at Marcus's door? I leaned back in my kitchen chair, suddenly feeling like I had all the time in the world to have this conversation. For once, Emma was the one who needed something from me, who was waiting for my response, who was off balance and scrambling for explanations. You said you were staying at Marcus's, I replied, keeping my voice as calm and reasonable as if we were discussing weekend plans. I helped you move. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped, but then I heard her breathing, that rapid, shallow sound people make when they're trying not to hyperventilate. Jake, this is crazy. It was work-related, okay? We had this emergency situation with the Patterson account, and Marcus has all the files at his place, and it just made sense for me to stay over rather than drive home late and then come back early in the morning. It's not what you think. I almost laughed out loud. After 4 years of marriage, Emma was finally explaining herself to me, and her explanation was exactly the kind of corporate BS I'd been swallowing for months. Interesting, I said, taking another sip of whiskey. Because in my experience, work emergencies usually involve hotels, not sleepovers at coworkers' apartments. Companies tend to have policies about that kind of thing. Jake, you're being ridiculous. You know how demanding my job is. You know how important this account is to my career. I can't believe you're making this into something it's not. And there it was, the classic Emma move. Turn the conversation around so that I was the problem. I was the one being unreasonable. I was the one who didn't understand the demands of her very important career that somehow never generated enough income to contribute to our household expenses. You're right, I said, and I could practically hear her sigh of relief. Work is very demanding. But here's the thing, Emma. Work has hotels. Work has conference rooms. Work has office buildings with security guards and proper lighting and expense accounts for emergency accommodations. Work doesn't require you to bring pajamas to Marcus's apartment. The silence was even longer this time. What makes you think? What makes me think you packed an overnight bag for a work emergency? I finished for her. Maybe because you've been doing it for months, Emma. Maybe because every time you have one of these work emergencies, you somehow need clothes and toiletries and all the other things you'd need if you were planning to spend the night somewhere that wasn't home. Finally, tears. Real ones I could hear through the phone. Jake, please, this is all a misunderstanding. Can we just talk about this like adults? Can I come home so we can work this out? Home? I asked. Home is where you chose to be tonight. You chose Marcus's. I just helped you make that choice permanent. What does that mean? It means your things are where you are. It means you've got everything you need to start your new life with Marcus. It means you don't need to worry about coming back here because there's nothing here for you anymore. Jake, please, you can't be serious. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? And that's when I delivered the line I'd been rehearsing in my head for the past 3 hours. Well, Emma, it seems like Marcus's couch is available. Maybe you two can figure it out together. I hung up, turned off the ringer, and headed upstairs to sleep in the middle of my own bed for the first time in years. Wednesday morning brought Emma's mother, Patricia, calling at 7:23 a.m. with what I could only assume would be the opening salvo in the family guilt campaign. Patricia had never liked me, which I'd always found ironic since I was the one financially supporting her daughter, while Emma found herself in whatever career du jour she was claiming to pursue. Jake, Patricia's voice came through the phone like nails on a chalkboard. What the hell do you think you're doing to my daughter? Good morning, Patricia. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you this lovely Wednesday morning? Don't you dare take that tone with me. Emma called me at 6 in the morning, crying her eyes out because you threw her onto the street like some kind of common criminal. The threw her onto the street narrative was classic Emma, making herself the sufferer in a situation where she'd been the one making choices. Well, Patricia, that's interesting because from where I'm sitting, Emma chose to stay at Marcus's place. I just helped her with the logistics. You know damn well what you did. You can't just throw a person's belongings out and change the locks like some kind of landlord evicting a tenant. Actually, Patricia, I can. See, Emma doesn't live here anymore. She made that pretty clear when she decided to spend her nights at Marcus's place. I'm just respecting her decision to relocate. She's your wife. You took vows. You made promises. You can't just throw away a marriage because of some silly misunderstanding. Silly misunderstanding. That's what Emma's mother called her daughter's affair. You're absolutely right about the vows. I promised to love, honor, and cherish Emma. I kept those promises right up until she decided they didn't apply to her. Emma is going through a difficult time in her career. She's under enormous pressure, and sometimes people make mistakes when they're stressed. That doesn't mean you abandon them. Career pressure, that was rich, considering Emma's career seemed to consist mainly of networking events that never resulted in any actual business, and client meetings that happened exclusively at Marcus's apartment. Here's the thing about mistakes, Patricia. Mistakes are things like forgetting to pick up milk or missing an anniversary dinner. Sleeping with your coworker for months while your husband pays all your bills. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. You're going to regret this. Emma is a wonderful woman, and you're going to realize what you've lost when it's too late to get her back. You know what, Patricia? You might be right. I might regret losing a woman who never contributed financially to our household, who spent her evenings with other men while I cooked dinner alone, and who announced her intention to sleep at her lover's house via text message. That sounds like a real loss. The line went dead. Patricia had hung up on me, probably because she'd finally understood that her daughter's situation wasn't quite as legally solid as she'd hoped. Thursday morning brought financial warfare. I discovered this delightful development when my phone started buzzing with fraud alerts at 9:17 a.m. while I was sitting in my office trying to focus on blueprints. The first alert was from my credit card company. We've detected unusual activity on your account. A charge of $847 at Nordstrom has been declined due to insufficient available credit. $847 at Nordstrom. That was Emma's panic shopping amount, the exact dollar figure she always seemed to hit when she was stressed, and decided that retail therapy was the solution to her problems. Except this time she was trying to charge her emotional breakdown to my credit card while simultaneously living with another man. The customer service representative was a guy named Kevin, who sounded like he'd been dealing with domestic financial drama since before the internet was invented. Mr. Henderson, we show several attempts to use your card starting around 8 this morning. The first was at a coffee shop for $12, which went through. Then we had the Nordstrom charge, followed by attempts at Target, a gas station, and something called Bella Vista Salon and Spa. Bella Vista Salon and Spa. Emma was trying to charge a spa day to my credit card while homeless by her own choice, living on Marcus's couch because she'd blown up her marriage for a guy who apparently hadn't thought through the logistics of suddenly acquiring a full-time mistress with expensive tastes and no income. Kevin, I need to report unauthorized use of my card. The person making these charges is my estranged wife, and she no longer has permission to use this account. I understand, sir. We'll need to cancel this card immediately and issue you a new one. Can you confirm that you're in possession of the physical card? I checked my wallet. Yes, I have the card. She must be using the number from memory. That's not uncommon in these situations. We'll flag the account for fraud monitoring. Is there anything else we should know about potential unauthorized usage? Actually, yes. Can you check if there have been any credit applications submitted using my information recently? The pause told me everything I needed to know. Mr. Henderson, I'm showing a credit application submitted yesterday evening for a card with a $15,000 limit. The application was approved, and the card was expedited for delivery to an address that doesn't match our records. $15,000. Emma had tried to open a credit card in my name with a limit that would cover several months of her expensive lifestyle, probably figuring she could run up the charges and disappear before I noticed. The address was almost certainly Marcus's apartment. Kevin, I did not apply for that card. I need to report this as identity theft and fraud. Detective Harris from the fraud unit laid it out for me. Mr. Henderson, your wife committed serious crimes, identity theft, credit fraud, attempted wire fraud. If she's convicted, we're talking real prison time. You can file a report and press charges or try to settle this quietly. But if you don't press charges, you stay exposed to more fraud. I wanted to press charges. All of them. For the first time since this nightmare began, Emma would face real consequences. Not long after her cards got declined, she called. You fool! Did you report my card stolen? Are you kidding me? I reported fraud on my accounts, I said. You're no longer authorized, so any charge you make is fraud. I'm your wife. We're married. I can use our accounts. Actually, no. Being married doesn't give you rights to accounts you're not listed on, and it sure doesn't let you open credit in my name. Silence. She was starting to get it. Jake, this is crazy. I just needed cash to get back on my feet. You know I don't have money right now. Because you've been with Marcus instead of working. That was your call. So are the consequences. You can't do this. You'll ruin my life, my career. Marcus and I got reported to HR because of you. Now this, you're destroying everything. The HR part was news to me, but it made sense. Most companies frown on coworkers hooking up, especially when one is married. Emma, I'm not ruining your life. You cheated. You lied. You stole. I'm just not covering for you anymore. This isn't over. My mom's calling her lawyer. You can't lock me out and erase me. Actually, I can, and I am. Your life isn't here anymore. Build a new one on your own dime. Emma spent 18 hours in jail. Saturday at 9:47 a.m., I was sipping coffee when a loud engine shattered the quiet. A bright orange U-Haul screeched to a stop in front of my townhouse. Emma jumped out wearing dark sunglasses that couldn't hide her tears, followed by her cousins Brett and Mike, both built like hired muscle. Brett held a crowbar. Mike carried a sledgehammer. So property damage was their plan. I called my brother Chris, ex-military and 10 minutes away. That backup you offered, if Emma did something stupid, she's doing it. Next, my lawyer friend Sandra. Emma's at my door with 2 guys and a crowbar. Can you document this? Then, Detective Harris. My recently arrested wife is trying to break down my door. I opened the door just as Brett shoved the crowbar and he stumbled forward. Morning, folks. Need something? I asked. Emma tried to sound in charge. Jake, we need to talk. You can't lock me out of my own home. I have rights. Your own home? Got a lease? Mortgage? Any paper showing you own or rent this place? I lived here 4 years. I'm your wife. I belong here. Actually, Chris said, appearing behind them, she doesn't. Brett and Mike tensed, recognizing someone who knew how to handle trouble. Sirens wailed. Harris arrived with patrol cars right behind her. Brett dropped the crowbar like it burned. Mike eased the sledgehammer to the ground. Miss Henderson, we need to talk, Harris said, heading straight for Emma. Second arrest, attempted break-in, trespassing, and violating her release terms. The weeks after were strangely peaceful. I rediscovered the sound of my house without constant chaos. Coffee just how I liked it. Music as loud as I wanted. Meals whenever I felt like it. The bedroom looked bigger without her clutter and brighter without the blackout curtains she demanded for her morning light sensitivity. Work got better, too. Clients noticed I was sharper and more creative. The townhouse finally felt like mine. Clean, calm, honest. Emma's mother, Patricia, kept calling. First guilt trips, then legal threats. But no lawyer wanted a client claiming rights to a house she never paid for while facing identity theft charges. Emma's last move came through her attorney, some formal demand for equitable distribution of marital assets. Basically, give me money even though I stole from you. Sandra replied with a full list of everything I paid during our marriage versus Emma's share, which came to about $40 a month, mostly coffee. Her last words, shouted as Harris cuffed her the second time. You'll regret losing me, Jake. You'll never find better. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of my house breathing air free of lies. Emma was wrong. I didn't regret losing her. I only regretted waiting so long. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. You just need to change the locks and file the paperwork. My dad's voice echoed in my head. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Emma had shown me. I finally believed it.